Kenny Florian predicts the outcome of Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan. Just like with the co-main event, absolute majority of people who plan on tuning into UFC 311, who also have relatively decent understanding of the sport, expect the lightweight title fight to be a difficult clash for both fighters. When Islam and Arman fought for the first time in St. Petersburg, the Armenian was a debuting fighter in the UFC, and the very reason he was signed in the first place was sharing the octagon with him that night. In a rush to find an opponent for Makhachev, UFC sent offers to different lightweights for the matchup, but no one was too excited about the prospect of going to a foreign country in order to fight somebody who was already looked at as the next Khabib on his turf. That's when UFC reached out to Tsarukyan and made the fight with Islam. Arman surprised everybody with his skill set and how competitive the fight turned out to be, with him even taking down Makhachev. This time, they're fighting for the belt, and they're going to demonstrate who has improved more since that first meeting of theirs. Kenny Florian gives his prediction.
Makhachev has so many skills everywhere, man. He's knocking guys out, he's submitting you, he can control his way to a victory. So there's just more ways for him to win here. And Tsarukyan sometimes can be hot and cold as well. There's times where I'm like, damn, this guy looks explosive, he looks phenomenal. And then it's Oliveira, he makes a big mistake, gets taken down, or not taken down, he got put into a guillotine, got rolled into mount, did an awesome job of coming back and winning that fight. And I thought he deserved the win. So his toughness cannot be questioned. But as far as his mistakes versus Makhachev's, I'm leaning towards Islam here. I like him in this spot. And yeah, I think and still.
Jamahal HIll was greeted by an unfriendly crowd on the press conference before the event Saturday. His attitude following the loss to Alex Pereira changed the feelings of a large portion of fans toward him, who now view him as one of their favorite fighters to troll, reminding him of getting knocked out by Pereira every chance they get. What caused all of this was Hill's denial of the loss, blaming it on the referee in a nonsensical attempt to discredit the defeat itself. Then he began to take shots at Pereira, trying to create a beef between them, with the obvious explanation being that these are moves to create more engagement from fans and make them want to see that fight once more, with most just wishing to witness the same outcome. But regardless, it's engagement. Hill running up on Pereira in the gym recently, only to turn down an offer to spar when Alex told him to put on gloves, further damaged his image in fans' eyes. So they had a predictable reaction to any time Hill spoke on the press conference, and in one moment, Merab started talking in his ear to comfort him.
Obviously, you and Yuri have been circling each other for...
You bleeding over and the people sitting next to you, bro.
So Jamahal, I'll start with this. What do you make of this crowd reaction when you came out? You seem to kind of be playing to the crowd and kind of enjoying this reaction.
They know who I am. They know exactly who I am.
And in terms of your opponent, Yuri, obviously, he said he knows he has to keep his hands up, but when you step in there on Saturday, are you expecting the same Yuri Prochazka you've watched on all of his fights over the last several years?
My bad, say that one more time. Sound good.
Merab goes off on Khabib backstage, following the press conference for UFC 311. In a recent interview to a Russian channel, Low Kick, Khabib revealed that following the presser, Merab was yelling at Umar once they left the stage after the face-offs, and when he saw Khabib there, he started addressing him as well. Most likely, this moment pushed the former lightweight champion to share his feelings about Dvalishvili, who he says was forced into accepting the fight with Umar. It's no secret at this point that fighting Umar in January wasn't Merab's preferred outcome as a defending champion. Not only because of some personal feelings towards Umar and his camp, but also a relatively quick turnaround, all for a fight with Khabib's cousin who wouldn't get rushed to the top if he didn't share the same last name with him, Merab feels, when there are bigger and more lucrative fights for the champ in the division. But UFC wanted it, so in the end, it did materialize. Now, the conflict between the two sides made the matchup much more intriguing for fans, and their press conference only raised the temperature even higher. Merab and Umar got into some heated exchanges on stage, and according to Khabib, it continued backstage. Merab and Umar were going back and forth after leaving the center stage following their face-offs, and when Merab saw Khabib there, he started yelling at him as well. Here's what Khabib said about what happened, and in regards to Merab's attitude towards Umar and their fight in general. Quote, "I think Umar did everything necessary to get his title shot. Before the fight with Sandhagen, UFC told us, if he beats Corey, he will get a title fight next. He beat him in all 5 rounds, and Merab was forced into taking this fight. I think he really didn't want to fight. It's my opinion. UFC needed a co-main event, and they kind of forced him to fight Umar. He says Umar doesn't deserve it. Well, we will see who deserves what." When the reporter asked him what he thought about the trash talk between Merab and Umar on the press conference, Khabib said the following, quote, "We expected this. He likes to talk a lot, and Umar doesn't back down. They continued going at it backstage, and Merab even started yelling things at me when he saw me. I couldn't even hear. I was like, you need to focus on your fight. It's gonna be a rough one for you." End quote. Chael Sonnen reacts to Arman Sarukian, saying that if he captures the belt in the fight with Islam Makhachev, his priority as a champion would be money fights, and not creating some sort of a legacy for himself. The lightweight title challenger started making such statements fairly recently, and his comments made their first wave on social media, with reactions from fans and analysts ranging from surprised and neutral to much more negative. It is somewhat strange, in fact, to hear a fighter say that as a champion, his goal will be to make the most amount of money possible, and not chase creating a special legacy with many title defenses and broken records. While many fighters in his position, or even current belt holders, most likely also have similar feelings, they're not quick to announce it because of the obvious potential for negative reception by fans. Arman doesn't seem to care about this, and whether he's being honest or trying to play another game, he's been successful in making people talk about it. Chael shares thoughts.
This always happens, and it's very rare that you get a guy to admit it. But it's a very rare spot. It's not often that you meet a cage fighter. It's not often that you meet a really good cage fighter. It's not often that you become a really good cage fighter who can main event a pay-per-view. I like that Arman let us in on this. I like that he let us in on what makes him tick. But I'm trying to make a bigger point for you. That the hardest fight and the money fight very seldomly are the same fight, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're the champion, and 3 times a year when your phone rings, you don't get asked who to fight, you get told who you're going to fight. And we as a community, no problem. As long as those 3 times a year, when that phone rings, your answer is yes.